All right, I have that going. So the first thing I'd like to do is share a spreadsheet with everyone that I put together yesterday. So keep that in mind. Data was pulled from the system yesterday. It is possible, of course, that minor changes have occurred since then, but should be fairly close to accurate. So again, I am going to share this with everyone that's in attendance on the call today. And what I've done is pulled together some information about our purchase orders that are outstanding in the system, going really all the way back to 2016 when we switched over to Dynamics 2012, and of course now we're on D365. So I'm going to walk through this, and that way you have an understanding of what it is, how it can help you, and then of course you're welcome to modify this for your own purposes when I send it out. So on the left-hand side here, we have a pivot table called Received Purchase Order Lines by Division. You'll notice that I've excluded 2023. So the first thing that we wanted to look at were all the purchase order lines in the system that have been marked received historically, but have not yet been invoiced. And so I've got this broken down by department at the highest level. We can filter in a little bit and go down to division level on the left-hand side. And then you'll notice there's a column for each year. And so in total, in the system, we have 6,088 lines that are from 2022 or prior that have been marked as received but have never been invoiced. And so this is certainly an area of cleanup that we want to focus on and make sure that we get these cleaned up to the best of our abilities. Now, some of our larger departments, obviously, they've got more work ahead of them than some of our smaller groups. But nonetheless, very important to point out that, you know, these items have been marked as received, and we don't have an invoice. So there's certainly some follow-up that needs to be done, or if there's some type of error and the PO needs to be corrected, you know, that action can be taken as well. The second grouping here is the same information, but I filtered it by year. Obviously, you can see from 2016, we've got a very small number, but as we approach 2023, that number gets substantially higher with almost 5,000 lines having been marked as received in the system in 2022, but not yet invoiced. So again, there's further breakdown in here by quarter, by PO. I do have the base data, which I'll share here in just a minute, that's in the system as well, so that you can filter so it works for you. And then as I continue going right, I now have the outstanding encumbrances. So I've just ran outstanding encumbrance inquiry in the system and pulled everything. So this is going to include two-way and three-way, project and non-project. You'll notice on the pivot here, I have included a filter. So currently, I have removed the project level. So this kind of shows our outstanding encumbrances, excluding project-related ones, right? And so these numbers are pretty high, right? The count of PO lines, just over 16,000 for 2022 that are still outstanding. You know, we really want to stress as we move into year end and this PO cleanup effort that, you know, certainly an effort needs to be made to get these previous POs taken care of. That's always best practice, of course, is to keep these up to date as much as possible in the system. And I think that with the pandemic and everything going on, I think we probably have a little bit of catch up to do. And then the final chart that I prepared for you, sorry, I went too far, on the right-hand side, this is a list of our outstanding POs that are in total less than $50. And so for the older years, we're doing pretty good. But as we approach 2021, we still have about 365 documents out there that are for $50 or less. And so certainly those are good ones to review. A lot of them have like 1 cent, 2 cents, 3 cents. Those would be good ones to review and clean up if at all possible. Close those out. Sorry about that. Close those out, get those taken care of and finalized. And so just a couple examples from that. We've had a couple POs that have rolled for 2 consecutive years for 1 cent. Certainly, you know, not what we're intending to do. We actually have several POs that have been rolling for $0. So for whatever reason, they had a line on them for $0. That line was received, but it was never invoiced. It was never closed out. And so we actually consecutively rolled a PO two years in a row for $0. And obviously those are things that we would like to avoid. Darlene, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd just like to just appeal to everybody to do their best to try to clean up these documents. Cheryl's going to present to you some functionality that you can use, and there's work aids available to walk you through how to cancel these purchase orders. Just as important it is to have a purchase order, it's important that we just keep the ones that we're currently working with outstanding on our system. It just takes up extra resources, kind of slows down the system when we have all these extra documents sitting out there that nobody's going to use. And at every year end, we roll these over, and that's quite a detailed process to get those up and functioning for the next year. So if we're rolling things that we're never going to use again, it's tying up money, it's tying up resources, and I would just appeal to you to use these this functionality that Cheryl's going to present to try to clean these up the best that you can, and we appreciate your help with that. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Darlene. As I mentioned, these are just 4 pivots that I threw together. The Excel spreadsheet I'm going to share with you does contain some detail lines as well for your use. And so I want to go over those real quick. The first tab is the accrued spending. Now, this is actually a report. I was not familiar with it. Sandeep Sohal is new to our team, and she actually brought it to our attention that this report will show you lines that have been received in the system but not yet invoiced. And so we've reviewed that report in depth. We're actually aiming to make some enhancements to it. So what I have done in the meantime is I've ran this report with all outstanding received lines as of 10/1, and then I've gone in and I've added department and division. So unfortunately, those are 2 things that are not coming over in that report right now. I've also added the original requester. Of course, depending on how old the particular PO is, it's possible that, obviously that person isn't in the same position with us any longer, but I've added it in case that it might help. So on this particular page, you can filter by either your department or your division. The key thing to note on this particular report is this date received column. So this date received is the date of your receipt that is currently open on the PO. And so when you go to reference that, you'll be able to, you'll notice the report also doesn't have a receipt ID or receipt number on it. That's one thing that we're going to look to get added to this particular report as well. But I still feel like it's very beneficial. It does give you the date received, so you can at least narrow down which receipt you're looking at and identify what's open on your particular PO. So that report is out there for you. I've also downloaded the entire outstanding encumbrance inquiry as of 10/1. You do have a PO listing if that would be helpful for you. It was helpful for me in trying to create the pivots, but I feel like the first 2 tabs are going to be more relevant for you. And then finally, the final tab is a list of our POs out there that are collectively, all the lines included are less than $50 each. And so you'll notice right off the bat, right, there's quite a few of them here highlighting just the first 38 that are 32 cents or less that are from 2022, many of these, a couple that are even older. These just need to be cleaned up, right? One-time effort, get them cleaned up, and then, then they'll be taken care of. Okay, so that's the first thing that I wanted to share with you. The second thing is the core content of today's training session. I'm going to share this document following the session as well, but we have a new functionality inside of purchase orders that will allow you to cancel multiple lines at once. And so obviously a lot of the feedback that we've gotten is when you go to cancel a PO line, say you have 6 lines, the whole entire PO needs canceled, you have to go into line 10 and click, and do a series of steps. You repeat that for line 20, line 30, and so on until you get all those lines deleted. All those lines canceled. Obviously, that's fairly inefficient. We've been looking for a way to improve that for quite a while, and finally have something to offer today. So I am going to walk through a couple examples of this. And like I said, I will be sharing this user guide following today's training. Permissions have been granted inside of the production environment, so you will now see this new option, whereas, first thing this morning, it was not there. All right, so I am going to, excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and open up. I'm currently in a non-production environment to share this with you. I'm currently logged in as a purchasing coordinator who has the ability to receive. So I'm not an invoicer, so I have the ability to review receipts that are on the PO. Okay, so kind of the first steps, as with any time that you're going to cancel a PO, you're obviously going to come to all purchase orders. You're going to filter for the POs that you want to cancel. So for today's example, I actually have 4 of them. Now, the most important thing that I can't stress enough, because people forget this a lot, it adds extra steps for them, which I'm sure is frustrating, is that first and foremost, you have to verify that there are no outstanding receipts on your PO. You do not want to hit request change on the PO until you have done that, because otherwise you've got to resubmit your PO, you've got to get it all the way back to confirmed before you can then correct or cancel the receipt, and you're basically starting over. So do yourself a favor, first and foremost, always check that. So the 4 examples I have today are quite simple examples, actually, because the purchase order status does in fact say received. So real easy to tell that I've got an outstanding receipt. But in some cases, if you've partially used a receipt, it may actually not, and you've invoiced it already at least once, it may show received here. So don't rely solely on this status being received on your particular PO. The best way to tell if you have an outstanding receipt, especially if you are also an invoicer, because if you are an invoicer, you don't see all the same things that individuals that can receive see. You see most of it. A few couple pieces of information are missing that will make it a little bit more difficult for you. So the best option is always to go to general and then go to line quantity. Okay, and then in looking at my line quantity, I can very clearly see that I've got a multitude of lines here. Give me one moment. Sorry about that. Yeah, I can see that I have 10 lines here that have all been received. I can also look at my invoice column, and I don't see that anything has been invoiced. And I have an invoice remainder showing for each of these lines. So what this tells me as a non-receiver is that someone has entered a receipt for this particular PO, and no one has invoiced it, right? So there is, in fact, a receipt out there that needs to be corrected or canceled before I can proceed with canceling this particular PO. And if anybody has any questions on that, feel free to pop something into the chat there, and I'll take a look and we can try to address it. All right, so I want to lead through a couple examples here for using this new functionality. The very first one that I'm going to do, I'm going to intentionally make a mistake, okay, because I want you guys to see what will happen in the system and the things that you need to check if this happens to you. So I want to cancel this particular Gulls PO. I'm going to open up my PO. Again, intentionally making a mistake. I'm going to go and I'm going to highlight all of these lines, right? So we just looked at the line detail. We could tell that none of them had been invoiced. I'm going to select all of my lines. I'm going to go to Update Line, and you'll now see this new option called Bulk Cancel PO Lines. So I'm not picking line 10, and then I'm not going to deliver remainder, and line 20 and going to deliver remainder. Highlighting all my lines at once, and then going to Bulk Cancel. Excuse me. All right, so that brings up a new page, but you'll notice that we don't see any information here, right? 0 out of 10 selected purchase order lines is successfully loaded for canceling the delivery remainder. So What I would anticipate seeing here is all 10 of my lines show up because we do have quantity remaining on all 10 of those lines. Nothing showed up. So if you have this happen to you, there are a couple of things you need to check. First and foremost, are all the receipts properly corrected or canceled? And we already know that's a no because we saw that I had outstanding quantity here that had been received but not invoiced. So that was our first mistake. 2 is double check that you actually have remaining quantity on a line to cancel, right? So that would be the second thing to check. And then third is, did you select request change? And so I did neither. I didn't cancel my receipt. I didn't correct my receipt. I didn't select request change on this PO. So if you go to cancel and you see a blank screen come up, that is intentional, right? We are validating that you are doing certain things first. All right. So on this example, I indicated that I am a purchasing coordinator. I am not an invoicer. So I do have the right to correct or enter receipts on this particular PO. So I'm going to go in and select receive, and I'm going to go to product received. Now, if you are also an invoicer, you will not have the ability to correct receipts. That is by design. So you will need to reach out to your receiver within your group and have them do the correction of cancellation before you proceed. And again, like I said, just make sure that's done before you select request change on PO. And so for this, I have one receipt entered back in April of 2021, right? And so I'm going to go to my lines, and I can see that all 10 lines have been received. We know from already looking that no invoice has been created. So for this one, I'm going to assume that we are just canceling the receipt. So I'm going to select cancel. I'm going to say yes. This will take just a second. Or maybe more. All right, so my receipt has been canceled. Now, if I am that person who doesn't normally receive, my receiver tells me it's been canceled, I want to confirm. I'm going to go back to general, I'm going to go to line quantities, and I can now see that my receipts column is blank, right? And I have an ordered and a delivery remainder here as well. So that tells me there's no longer a pending receipt out there. So my next steps then are going to be to go to the purchase order menu. I'm going to go ahead and select request change. Saying I'm not the owner, so I'm going to say yes, I want to continue editing. I'm going to select edit. I'm going to go to my header. And I'm going to make sure that I put my reason code of cancellation. So those parts of the process don't change, right? Your PO still needs to be submitted for cancellation through workflow. It still needs to be approved by one of your signature authorities within your group. Those parts have not changed. So I've selected request change, I've entered my reason code. I'm going to go back to lines, and I'm going to select all. And so one thing I want to mention about this particular PO, there's 10 lines, none of them have been invoiced. But say that lines 60 and 70 have them, right? So normally I would tell you, come in and select, every line but 60 and 70, click all those individually. We have designed this process so that you don't have to do that. You can go ahead and select every line on the PO, even if there's 40 lines and all but 3 have been fully invoiced. You can select all 40 lines. The system is only going to display on the next screen the lines to you that have a remaining quantity that can be canceled. So that saves you time as well, right? You don't have to scroll through 40 lines or 100 and pick the 3 that need to be canceled. Click them all, and the system is going to display the ones that can be canceled. So from there, I'm going to hit update line. I'm going to hit bulk cancel PO line. And now my screen returns data because we have made sure that we canceled our receipt first. We selected request change. We've done the things that we need to do. So on this particular screen here, It is going to give you, in this case, 10 lines because none of these had been invoiced. If we scroll to the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that the line status shows as an open order, not canceled at this point. And you have the option here of selecting just a couple lines if you just want to cancel, 3 of the 10, or if you're out to cancel everything, which is probably more typically the case, you can just select the little circle here in the corner. It's going to select all 10 of your lines. From there, we hit, I'm sorry, let me do that again. We hit purchase, bulk cancel. Are you sure you want to cancel all 10 of the selected lines? We're going to say yes. You get a confirmation up at the top that the delivery remainder has been successfully canceled for the 10 selected lines. If we scroll to the right on our list grid here, you'll now see that the line status is canceled. Okay? So instead of going into every single line and having to do those multiple clicks in a row, you're now able to do it all at once, which I think is going to be a great time saver. All right, so at this point, we are actually ready to go ahead and submit this to workflow. One final thing that we can do if we want to confirm, especially as you're getting used to this, we can go up to general, we can go to line quantity, and you'll now see that for all 10 of our lines, there's no longer a remaining quantity available on the ordered column or under delivery remainder. So that's our second confirmation that everything is as we expected, right? And so from there, we're just going to go ahead and select workflow and submit. Does anyone have any questions at this time that I can assist with? All right, okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate one more example. I've tried to pick POs that had multiple lines on there because that's definitely where it's going to be most beneficial for you. So I'm going to go back to my list. We're just going to pick a NAPA PO, and then let's go in and take a look at what we have going on for this NAPA PO. All right, so this NAPA PO has 11 lines. It does show with the status of received. So I'm going to go up to general, line quantity, and I can see, yep, that 11 lines have been received. My invoice remainder, nothing's been invoiced. So I know that I have to take care of my receipt. So I'm going to do that since I can receive. Again, otherwise you would go to your receiver. I'm going to go to receipt, product receipt. We're going to go ahead and cancel. And now, obviously, I'm demonstrating, right? So I'm just easily going in and canceling. But I know that you guys have more steps, right? If something has been received, in 2021 and not invoiced yet, why is that the case, right? I know I'm oversimplifying it here for the sake of this particular part, but I get that you guys have more steps. All right. Okay, so at this point, my receipt has been canceled. I'm going to go ahead and hit request change on my PO. I'm going to go to my header, hit edit, select cancel, go back to my lines, and I'm going to do update line, and then bulk cancel. Did I select all my lines? Select all my lines, update, bulk cancel. Okay, and so in this example, I'm actually going to go ahead just for the sake of demonstration, and I'm only going to cancel every other line, right? So I've selected approximately half, a little over half of my lines that are on this particular PO. I'm going to hit purchase, bulk cancel. It comes back and says, hey, do you want to cancel these 6 lines? I'm going to say yes. And then if I scroll to the right-hand side, I can now see that I have 6 lines that say cancel. My other items remain open. So if I go back to my line quantity page, I will in fact see that every other line has that remaining quantity available. Okay. All right, so now though, now I want to go ahead and cancel the remainders, right? And I mentioned that you can go ahead. We know we have 6 lines on here that are already canceled. I mentioned that you can actually just select every line and the system is going to tell you which ones remain, right? So that's what I've done. I've selected all of the lines. I'm going to go to update line, bulk cancel, and I lied. Oh, I know. I'm sorry. Let me do that again. Select all the lines, go to update line, bulk cancel. I'm going to select them all here. And then when I hit bulk cancel, that's not right. Let me try that one more time. Am I remembering wrong? My apologies. Yeah, this is what I'm not remembering right here. I apologize for that. Let me go back and check my notes on that one. All right. At the end of the day, though, when we go back now to our general line quantity, we can see that it did, in fact, cancel those remaining lines, and so now everything is gone. And so at this point, we're ready to go ahead and submit that to workflow. All right. Let me just see if I can check.
Cheryl, just another quick good check for the users. If there has been no invoice against the PO, they'll see that the status changed to canceled. And then if it has been partially invoiced, it will be invoiced. So right there in the top right, it says canceled in review. So that's right. That's just a quick dirty check to know that the PO has changed to the correct status.
Correct. Yep. Thank you. Let me just check the chat here real quick and see if we have any questions. Let's see. So we have a question about, will it tell you who received it? No, not on that screen, but there are other ways to see that. Kyle, which one do you recommend using for the product receipt that shows who created the receipt?
So I think it's going to be in the procurement sourcing module under order posting, and then it's product receipts. And I think that is the report that will show who.
There we go. Yep, because there are a couple different reports for product receipt. So this one will give you the username, who created the particular PO. Another one to not forget that's out there is under accounts payable. Let's see, where is it? Did not have that one. Invoice receipts, here we go. So under accounts payable, inquiries and reports, we have the invoice receipts. And this will actually give you the list of product receipts for a particular PO. And it will also tell you the invoices that it's been applied against as well. So that one's very useful. If you guys are not or have forgotten about this one, you might go back and take a look at this one too. Now this particular one doesn't say who entered the particular product receipt because it's more based on tying together the invoice number and the invoice receipt, but we use this a lot to help troubleshoot. So I think that would be great. All right, let's see what other question we have out there. Entered. Last question I have out there. Do you have a procedure document that you can send everyone? Yes, that's the one that I showed when we started. So it is. This particular document is going to talk specifically about the bulk PO line cancellation. We already have documentation out there for canceling a receipt or correcting a receipt. I will also share the links for that, and I think we have a couple videos out there too. So I'll pull all that stuff together after the call, and then I'll just share the bulk of all of it. All right. So if there's no additional questions on the bulk feature, there is one final thing that I would like to show, and this is the report that maybe more of you were aware of. Like I said, I certainly wasn't. But it's called the Accrued Purchases Excluding Sales Tax Report. And this report is the one that's going to give you all of the lines that have been received in the system but have not yet been invoiced. And the first thing I want to say is if you are someone who's worked with this report, you know the report's not perfect. And it's not. So that's why I've prepared the Excel spreadsheet for you. But I think that the report has a lot of great possibilities. And so we're going to work with our partner on Actuate, and we're going to do some extensions on that. We're going to do some enhancements on that so that we can add, the department and the division, and we can add a receipt ID. We can add some more useful information for you. However, I think that in its current state, it does provide value still. So I'm going to navigate to that report, and I'm going to show you the parameters to select. That is also in the documentation that I'm going to send out today, so you'll have that as well. So from accounts payable, we're going to go to inquiries and reports. We're going to go underneath invoice, and then we're going to go to accrued purchases excluding sales tax. That is going to open up a parameter window for you. And so in the cutoff date, you can enter in today's date. For display items accruing receipt liability, we want to say no. And then under the cutoff date, we want to choose accounting date, which is pretty simple because there's only accounting date, right? So there's a few other things that we want to change. So records to include, we're going to go ahead and say filter. And then unfortunately, this is where, there are options in here to filter by department. However, we're finding that it doesn't really filter as expected, right? Sometimes I get no results. Sometimes I get less results than expecting. So for the moment, I'm going to recommend that you don't add any filters for department or division. However, what we do need to do is filter by the approval status of your PO, and that is just to ensure that we pull back the right population of purchase orders, and that you're not filling your report with POs that you don't need to look at anymore. So let me step back 1 second here. So on records to include, we selected filter. Our table is going to be purchase order. Our derived table is purchase orders, so those are already pre-populated. For the field, we want to change this, and we want to pick approval status. And so you can either scroll through, or you can do a quick filter, and it's select approval status. And this is all in the document that I have for you guys. And then in the criteria box, we just want to include POs have an approval status of in review, rejected, approved, confirmed, or draft. Just select OK. One other thing that I want to point out is that you'll notice there's a destination section here, and you do have the ability to change it. So right now this is set to screen. And I'm going to leave it screen, but you do have the ability to change that. If you want the system to email you, you can do that as well. This report doesn't take a ton of time to run, but it does take a minute or two. So I'm going to leave it screen, and then I'm going to show you how you can change and export the data once it runs. So this will take a minute or two. While that is processing, now would be a good time for me to check the chat. So is there any other questions related to PO cleanup, related to this new functionality that I can address while the report is running? You guys are an easy crowd on me today. Thank you. All right, so we'll just give it a couple minutes here to run. I have a question. Is the above address where we find the list of POs that are old and they need canceling? I'm sorry, what address are you referring to? Are you referring to this URL up here? I think that's Jeannie. Oh, no, this is actually just a non-prod environment. So all the POs that I showed you, those are in production. I'll send out that Excel spreadsheet, and then you'll be able to see the list of POs that apply for your location or your division, and you'll be able to look those up in our production environment. Yeah, you don't want to fix them here because this is that's a non-production environment, and so you'd have to repeat all that work. There was also an option to run the report in batch. As you can tell, it takes several minutes, so that's always an option as well. I ran it in what's called interactive mode, so I didn't turn batch on, I just hit OK, which is why it's kind of locked up my screen here. All right. Okay, so my report returned, you can tell that currently is 646 pages long in non-prod, right? Hopefully in production it's a little better and we're going to see a lot more improvement over the coming weeks. But again, this report does show you your vendor, your purchase order number, the quantity that's been received, the date that it was received, obviously very important, and the actual cost. But this is in a PDF format, right? So, may or may not be useful to you, the way that you like to work. It was not useful to me. So you do have the option to come up and select export, where you have a variety of options to export it. Now, I will warn that if you choose the Excel export, it's going to export it exactly like it looks on the screen, and that's going to cause you a lot of cleanup in Excel. So I would recommend avoiding that. You can export it to CSV, and then it opens in Excel, and it's much easier to clean up. You've got to remove your total columns on the right-hand side, add a couple labels, and you're good to go. So that would be my recommendation, is to go ahead and export it CSV. And then, like I said, we are planning, now that we know this report and we see the benefit of this report, we're planning to make some enhancements to it. So, of course, I'll keep the group updated when those are completed and when the new report layout is available. Up until then, like I said, my goal is to get you this documentation, to get you the PO cleanup sheet. And I think that's all that I have for today. So I know we're only at 11:40. So time for final questions if you have any, and if not, I can give you 20 minutes back of your day. All right. Okay. Nothing's coming in chat. Feel free to unmute yourself. But if not, thank you for your time. I'll get this documentation out and have a great day.
Cheryl, I know you stressed it during the presentation, but remember to correct your product receipts before you start canceling lines. It just for that extra work. So it has to go through approvals, like Cheryl said. So just be careful when canceling lines that any product receipts have been addressed.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. I know we've said that like 12 times. That's how important it is. All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.